All right, so after a little futzing, realized in my blunder last night that what the issue was with this computer was an overheat, and that odd little alarm is a warning sound. So I took a little cleaner, cleaned off what compound I could, but as I looked more at this, it looks like it's already kind of scorched itself a little. The processor works, so you know it does get somewhat close to booting. I think if I throw a little thermal paste on this, I think this is going to work just fine. Now this heatsink here does have what appears to be a copper core, and it's got a nice fan, and the fan works, so I don't think there's any concerns about the fan being too small or anything. I don't know about this back fan, if this has enough power. We can always swap that out if need be, but we're going to go ahead and just give this a shot with some fresh thermal grease. Alright, so we got some fresh thermal grease in there. Nothing terribly fancy, but pretty good dollop right underneath the copper on this. Got the fan remounted. It is still a little dusty, but that's not really going to make enough of a difference right now. I think I will swap this back fan. I've got a thermal take from the same unit I pulled this out of. That might just have some better RPMs, and it's probably going to be a little bit nicer. So we're going to swap that in, and then we'll try and boot this again. So as I was going to pop this fan out, I realized it's plastic riveted into place. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to take that fan out. However, I know the case has a side mount duct, and that would be something we could probably mount, you know, this thermal take fan to in time. But I think for right now, let's just give it a shot just to see if it boots. I might just put the fan here on the side just to give it a little extra airflow if we don't get a good boot. But let's get it hooked back up and see what we can do. All right, we got the power going here. I'm going to go ahead and hit the power button on the tower. Oh, of course, it helps if you turn the power supply on. Kick in the gear. I think rather than going to boot, we're going to go ahead and go right into setup and see if we can just monitor the fluctuations in temperature here with the thermal grease in place. This looks like everything does still register. Everything looks good there. And let's see here. Okay. Wow. Really hot. And I want to enable it here. Just going to enable the thermal. And it looks like we're still climbing. We might be leveling off, though. Just going to watch it for a couple seconds here. It is still climbing in temperature. But again, we've got the PC fan going, and the heatsink is on there with some nice thermal grease. It does seem to be maintaining about 130, 132. I think we're going to go ahead and give it a shot. We're not going to save it. We're going to let it just go through. And obviously it'll fail out and shut down if the CPU gets too hot, but we will give it a good shot here. We're going to go ahead and do startup repair. I'll have to reference my last video. I don't know what the temperature it was running at late last night, but so far it seems to be booting rather normally. Startup repair is getting, we didn't get this far last night, so I am starting to think that maybe the thermal grease has done the trick here. Now whether or not that's accurate remains to be seen. let's do its thing and just take a look. Hasn't failed out yet. I would be very interested to know what the temperature on the case is. The ambient temperature in the room is probably somewhere around 70 degrees, so it's not like the warmest room ever. But, you know, I stick my hand in here to get some airflow, and there's really not a lot through this heatsink. And it's not necessarily the dust you can see in there. This is a pretty weak little cooling fan. I really would like to mount a second fan in here, but at this point, I think we're just going to go ahead and leave it for now. And I'm not going to do a system restore at this point. I think we're just going to let it attempt its repairs. Because so far I don't even know that we have any issues other than the overheat, which must be the case because we haven't gotten this far before. So what I do know is that I have another Athlon in my custom build from 12 years ago. So that computer doesn't power up. I don't know if it's a power supply issue or if it's also an overheat issue. I don't recall, but that's very possible there. So, you know, there's another custom we might be able to eventually repair and get running. The other thing is, even if I did get this, you know, bootable and running where it holds a steady, decent temperature, I really honestly don't know that this power supply is a great solution. Obviously, you can see the cable management in here is just a nightmare. So I would have to probably find a reasonable ATX power supply. But this is a pretty decent motherboard. As far as this video card goes, it is an AGP. It's a 32 meg, so it might not be perfect. But if this is a bootable system, you know, it may be worth pouring some time into to make into something decent. But we're going to go ahead and let this startup repair go and just see if we maintain good temp. So while startup repair is running, the next thing I want to do with this case is figure out how to mount this fan to this intake. Now it's going to be a temporary thing just because, you know, I don't know if I'm actually going to even keep this tower, but if I can get some decent airflow through it, there is a good chance that I might be able to keep this thing temperature regulated. I think the easiest way to do it is to wrap a zip tie around and then do at least 2, if not 4 zip ties through the screw holes and see if that'll just hold it in place just well enough to get this moving some air. Alright, not the most elegant solution, but it's doing its job. The only thing I worry about is the depth. There's not a ton of room actually in this case between where this sits and the processor fan, so hopefully that doesn't cause any issues. Again, worst case scenario, not a big deal. But it has been in startup repair this whole time. I think I'm going to cancel it out because I don't know that it's actually doing anything. And I don't know that it's actually even needed. So we're going to go ahead and cancel that out and get things put into place and see what we can do. Alright, so I did a test fit here, and I think it will just clear the top of the processor fan. You know, that's going to add just a little bit of awkward air movement, but I don't think it's going to create an issue. However, before I can hook it up and actually test run it, it has to finish the startup repair, and I don't know how long this is going to take. So we're just going to let it run, and so far so good. It has not, you know, gotten too hot where it's going to shut itself down. So I think the thermal grease really did the trick. And hopefully we get this into Windows and we can see how this runs. Okay, so startup repair completed. It said it couldn't automatically repair this computer, so I'm going to run a quick blast of air through to dust this out a little more. I am going to plug in my little quick rig fan and just see if we can get it powered and if it mounts in here with enough clearance so it doesn't cause any issues, and then we'll go ahead and power it up and see if we can get it to boot. Okay, so unfortunately the sort of rigged up fan here will not fit in this case. It's just too deep. So we're going to go ahead and just fire it up with it just leaning there to add just a little extra airflow and see if we can get this one to boot up. Alright, power is on. We've got a post beep. I see our fan isn't even running, so I guess I'm not even going to worry about that then. It is plugged in, but this one might just be dead. or it's jammed. Yep, it's just jammed. Alright, we'll lean that back up in here. Again, that's just to create just a little bit more airflow. We are booting right up to Windows so far. No overheat alarm yet. Looks like Windows 7 Home. And John, and it is password protected. So that may be where this trip ends, but we did successfully repair this custom-built tower. Again, we'll have to swap out this power supply. I doubt we'll be able to crack the password here, but we are good to go. Well, and the password was John for John's custom-built computer. And the password hint was John. So apparently it wants to run a couple of things. Apparently it had some recent changes. Gonna restart later. And it looks like John did a good job cleaning up his computer. I don't see anything personally identifying. So good job, John, on that. Again, when you send your computer to the recycler, if you're not wanting to keep it, make sure you wipe off your personal information. Leave it bootable if you want, but do a good job cleaning it out first. But this is our first Windows 7 bootable. Really excited about this. This will probably be one we'll look to preserve. If you like this content, please hit that subscribe button, the notification button to stay up to date with us. And I will continue to be putting out content not only on this channel, but over at Digital Escape Podcast here on YouTube. We are a weekly episodic show where we talk all sorts of good stuff like our favorite movies, favorite TV series, favorite foods, favorite advice, and more. We're also available over on Podbean. And we have a sister podcast, the Warp Core podcast, which is a Star Trek podcast. If you're into that, go over to Digital Escape Podcast here on YouTube. Hit subscribe. That is also weekly episodic with 2 of us over there and exclusive to YouTube. So thanks again for your time. You guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back in the lab soon.